Hello everyone, Reg.e here, welcome to the video, hope you're all doing well. I'm not too bad, thank you. All my problems are self-inflicted, as usual, as is the human condition. We're going to start off with the subject of titanium. Not too controversial, but if you like this kind of video, I will add it to my roster of video types, and we can look at some more controversial subjects in the future, perhaps even some more controversial YouTubers. Who could that be? Who knows? Buying a titanium bike is the single best bicycle investment you will ever make. Okay? I'm very biased, it's true. I have sold titanium bikes in the past. I own a titanium bike. I just think the material is absolutely wonderful. But that is the hill I'm going to die on. Titanium is the best bike frame material. Another thing that inspired me to make this video was actually a comment on one of GC Performance's videos. Today's video that I will be reviewing is this video from GCN, everything you didn't know about titanium bikes. Now, normally GCN make utterly terrible videos, which are simply adverts designed to get people into making very poor spending decisions, especially newer and younger riders. They're there purely to drive the unfettered spending within the bicycle industry. Today's video from GCN is not actually that bad. It's very informative and they make some good points. I just want to add a little bit to it because there's a few things, like I say, that they say which I think are a little bit misleading. But this video from GC Performance, he recently tried this Thai bike. He seemed to like it. He had good things to say about it. It's from a brand I've never heard of called Blackheart. But looks like a nice bicycle. And if we go down, what really tickled me is in the comment section as I was scanning through, I saw this comment from a guy called Carl, who I believe I've seen on my channel commenting before. If this is you, say hi. And he said, Reginald Scott is a massive fan of titanium. Guilty. He's the mechanic who schooled Hambini on bearing extraction. That is true. I did that twice at least. I liked his comment. So there you go, and then it sort of deteriorates into a load of comments about Hambini and him being similar to Dorian Rider, I think. So there you go. Anyway, right, let's get on with it then. So
get on with it.
Yes, get on with it.
Now we want to get on to the juicy bits where I have comment to make. So that starts around here about 4:18. So we'll start off here.
Sort of like looking at that titanium tube, how does something like that compare in its like properties compared to like a steel tube or an aluminium?
I also have a video I want to review from Peak Talk because I think he does an absolutely disastrous video on titanium. Usually, again, I really like Pete Talk's videos. I have to make this abundantly clear. He is a good YouTuber and very informative, very knowledgeable. But his video on titanium was bloody awful. So I'm going to review that one. If you like this video, if you find this enjoyable content, I will review that video and give my critique on that one.
What are the differences, especially if we looked at like for like profiles and shapes?
Yeah, so titanium is, it sits sort of, if we're thinking about the materials that you build bikes from, titanium sits kind of nicely in the middle in terms of its mechanical properties. So if you were to...
You're going to need to remember that for future videos. Mechanical properties, very important.
Have the exact same tube and it were made out of aluminium. The aluminium one would be lighter than this one.
Yeah.
But it'd be very rare that you'd have an aluminium tube with that thickness because aluminium wouldn't be strong enough in that thickness.
So an aluminium tube would have to be thicker to be stronger.
So the actual weight difference when you are using it in a practical sense would be less than the theoretical difference in terms of just the density. But yeah, so titanium has a higher density than aluminium, a lower density than steel, higher stiffness than aluminium, lower stiffness than steel.
See, all this is really important information, and it's actually something that a lot of people get wrong, I think, and it's often a fallacy that you will find in a lot of GCN videos. In fact, I can think of GCN times GCN has said this. I can think of the times where other creators have said this, whereby there's this belief I don't know where it comes from, that you can make any bicycle with any ride characteristic, any property that you want out of any material. Okay, so the one that often you hear is when people are advocating for carbon fiber. They will say, you can make a carbon fiber bike that feels as comfortable as a titanium bike. Okay? So why bother buying titanium? This is untrue. I'll tell you why it's untrue. Every material has different mechanical properties. Okay? Inherent within the material itself. We're inherent within the crystalline structure of the metal. There are different properties. Okay? Now, it is true that by changing tube shapes and wall thicknesses of the tube, you can alter the way that materials respond under stress. That's very true. However, certain things you cannot escape from. So you can make a steel tube very, very stiff by increasing the wall thickness and making it bigger, you know. But by doing so, you add a lot of weight. Same could be said for carbon fiber. You can make a carbon fiber bike more comfortable by increasing the flexibility in the frame, but by doing that, you make it weak. Okay, you lose strength. Titanium is the best bike frame material, in my opinion, because you can not only make it thin tubed or thin wall tubed, okay, and narrow tubes to increase comfort, but in doing that, you do not reduce the strength of the bike to a point where it would be unusable. You cannot make an aluminium bike equal to that of a titanium bike. You can make a titanium bike as stiff as an aluminium bike by just making the tubes thicker. You make an aluminium bike as light as titanium. But if you do that, the aluminium bike will become weak and it will easily break. You'll easily break the frame. In order for the frame to be strong enough to be rideable, you have to sacrifice ride comfort with aluminium by making the tube thickness thicker. Okay? By making the tubes denser and thicker, you will lose comfort, you will gain strength. You will never get down to the comfort and the strength of titanium in that material. I hear it all the time, oh, you can make any bike out of any material and make it feel any way you like. No. If you want certain properties which are inherent to those materials, you have to pick those materials. That is why they do not make suspension bridges out of cheese. Because no matter how thick you make the cheese, you couldn't build a suspension bridge out of it that would support the weight of a truck. Can't do it. It would be impossible. Different materials, different properties. If you want the lightest bike you can buy, it's probably going to be carbon fiber. If you want a comfortable, durable bike, it's going to be steel or titanium. If you want a stiff and inexpensive bike, it's probably going to be aluminium.
Strength will vary depending on the alloy. So it sits kind of nicely in the middle of the range of mechanical properties, certainly for metals that would be used to make bikes. And so you can use it to then design and make quite a broad range of types of bike. You can make stiff bikes, flexible bikes, that sort of thing.
Like fit in the balance of what you want to achieve.
Yeah.
So in terms of looking at overall bikes built up, ready to go, what are some of the reasons why somebody might want to consider maybe?
I don't think we need to go into this. I've stressed all these reasons in my previous videos. If you want to know the reasons for why you should go out and buy a titanium bicycle today or tomorrow or the next week, go watch my video. I just want to give you an example. I have some stuff here. This is actually for a future video, but I might as well show you now. This is a titanium tube. It's actually not. This is a single sheet of 6.4 grade titanium, aerospace titanium, which has been folded and welded into a tube. This is actually the top tube from a T1 SL, which is the bike that I currently ride. This one has been cut off, so it's hollow on both sides. The thickness of this tube is ridiculous. It's let me have a look here. It's less than 0.5 millimeter, so 0.4 of a mil, maybe something around there. Very, very, very thin indeed. And yet it's very light. this is incredibly strong. This is so strong, in fact, that this can bear my full body weight standing on it without collapsing. It just flexes slightly and then springs back to normal. It's so strong that I would challenge customers that would come into my store to break it. I said, if you can break this with your hands or your feet, okay, crack this tube or squash it completely, I will give you a free bicycle. Nobody ever broke it. No one. People tried, but no one succeeded. If you had a carbon tube, this thickness, okay, less than 1/2 mil thick, open-ended like this, unsupported, you could easily crush it with your bare hands. I'll give you another example. I have 3 seat tubes here. One is, they're slightly different sizes, but different materials as well. This is a titanium seat tube, okay, off-cut from one. This is a carbon one, and this is an aluminium one. Okay, now, the aluminium one is the heaviest, even though titanium is a heavier material. It's a higher density than aluminium, but the aluminium is clearly heavier than the titanium. The carbon fiber seat tube is also heavier than the titanium one. But strength-wise, these are all pretty similar. Okay, they're all more than strong enough to support your body weight on top of the seat, or the saddle, should I say. So, in order to get the strength required to support your body weight, these materials had to be made in different thicknesses. Okay, now the Thai one is, as I say, the lightest one in my hand, and it is 1 millimeter thick. Yeah, 1 mil thick. Okay, for this one, for the Thai one, the lightest one, and very, very strong. This is obviously considerably stronger than the 1/2 mil thick tube that I just showed you. There's no way you're breaking this one. Absolutely no way at all. The carbon fiber one, which is the next heaviest, or the next lightest, whichever way you look at it, is 2.5, just under 2.5 mil thick. So let's call it 2.5. 2.5 mil thick. 1 mil thick. Interesting. And then the heaviest one, the aluminium one, this one is nearly 3 mil thick. Yeah, very close to 3 mil. So we've got 1 mil thick, 2.5, 3. In order to do the same job, which is support your bum on the saddle. If you made the alley tube the thickness of the Thai tube, it would collapse. And if you made the carbon tube the thickness of the Thai tube, it would snap.
Now, something that people often say when you're talking about titanium bikes is like, oh, there's that like titanium buzz that you get. Is that a thing? And what on earth, how would you explain that to someone that wouldn't know what to expect?
So it is to a certain extent, yeah. So like the material property is quite a, for want of a better word, it's quite a springy material.
Yeah.
So it does tend to respond slightly differently to, for example, the vibrations that you get from riding over a road, you know, that kind of road buzz.
That like high frequency stuff.
Yeah, it will respond differently to other materials just because of its underlying properties. So yeah, I think as a general rule, titanium bikes do feel smoother to ride than other materials.
So that's really important. Yes, some people, some naysayers will say that, oh no, you know, titanium doesn't have any special ride characteristics or any special qualities like that. No, it really does. Never ridden an uncomfortable Thai bike. I'm sure it's possible, if you don't know what you're doing to make an uncomfortable Thai bike, you could just increase the tube thickness and wall thickness of the tubes to a point where they were so stiff that you would get no flex from the frame whatsoever. But nobody in their right mind making a decent Thai... Thunder and lightning. Nobody in their right mind making a decent Thai bike would do that, of course. So yes, generally speaking, if you buy a Thai bike, it's going to be significantly more comfortable than a bike in other materials, because that is the kind of qualities you want from a Thai bike. You want it to be comfortable. You want it to be a nice ride. It's one of the endearing qualities of a titanium bike. In future videos, people are going to bring this up and they're going to get it totally wrong. They're going to talk about cost now. This is quite an interesting point.
When you look at, I think, titanium bikes, I think it's fair to say typically you could say you see far more custom titanium bikes than what you do in other materials. But how would you rank a titanium bike and as a material in terms of price compared to other materials?
Yeah, it's pretty much the main downside of the material from a consumer point of view is that the cost is always high. So titanium as an element is actually quite abundant. There's a lot of it on Earth, but it is very difficult to get it from its kind of raw ore form into a useful material. And basically, what you're really paying for is energy, and energy costs
They've gone through the roof.
perpetually get higher,
Yeah.
right? And they're never really going to go down.
No.
So titanium will always be a relatively expensive metal from that point of view. And
Right, so this is interesting. So this is one of the negatives that I hear about titanium a lot. And I'd like to counter it to some extent. So often people say, oh, titanium bikes, they're expensive. Can't afford one of those. In fact, I might as well go to that point right now. So we go to the very end of the video. I just want to show you the very last point that's made.
I certainly know I enjoyed speaking to Tom, and for me, a titanium bike is one which I wish to own, but unfortunately still seems to be a little bit out of my price brackets. But remember, for all things...
Right, okay, so it's that very statement, okay? It's that very statement that I hear all the time. I hear this as an objection from customers when I used to do sales of titanium bikes. I would hear this all the time. Oh, titanium is expensive. I can't afford it. Is that really true? Now, there will be some of you watching out there, unfortunately, who, yes, it's true. You can't afford a titanium bike because maybe you can't afford any bike. Or maybe you simply don't have any budget at all right now to buy a bike. And that's unfortunate. I hope that situation changes for you in the near future. However, to say that titanium bikes are expensive is a bit of a fallacy in my opinion. Now, they generally end up talking to people like this guy, Mr. Sturdy, who's making custom titanium bike frames, which of course are going to be expensive. They're the creme de la creme of the titanium market. You know, you're not going to pick one of these things up for a few $100. But you're comparing apples and oranges. You know, people, what they do is they look at a titanium bike that costs $20,000, $30,000, and then they're comparing that with a mass-produced Trek or Specialized bike that maybe costs a couple of $1,000s, and they're saying, oh, the titanium bikes are expensive. You're looking at the wrong bike. You're looking at a Ferrari and comparing it with a Kia. Okay, nothing wrong with a Kia, by the way, but they're two different levels. What you want to do is compare Kia with, Hyundai, all right? Something on the same level. So you can get Thai bikes the same price as carbon bikes, and most people can afford a carbon bike. Most people watching this video right now have got a carbon bike. So if you've ever said to a sales guy or to yourself, oh, I can't really afford a Thai bike, it's a bit too expensive, and you already own a carbon bike or you're thinking of buying a carbon bike, then you're lying to the salesman and you're lying to yourself, okay? I hear it all the time. Customers will say to me, I can't afford a Thai bike, and they will go out and they will spend more money on a big brand carbon bike. They do it all the time. It drives me up the wall. And the reason is peer pressure, especially here where I live in Asia. People don't like to be different. People like to conform. And so all their friends ride Treks or all their friends ride Specialized, so they buy a Trek or a Specialized. And that's just the way things are. However, if you're not a conformist, stop thinking like that, okay? Start thinking, what are the advantages of buying or investing my money in a Thai bike? And a Thai bike is an investment, whereas a carbon bike will eventually wear out or potentially snap or break and is worth nothing. A carbon bike is worthless. I'll tell you why it's worthless. Because if you take a broken carbon fiber frame to a scrap man, he will give you nothing for it because it's not worth anything. If you take a broken titanium frame to a scrap man, he will give you cold, hard cash because titanium is a valuable material. And we'll talk about that more in a second. But, like I say, it's you have to compare the two things together with something which is equal, right? So if we go to the Lightspeed website here, top of the range Lightspeed here, let's see now, it would be this one. Okay, so this is their top of the range bike, Spezia F1, fully integrated premium performance road bike, $8,495. Now, Lightspeed are not the most expensive brand out there, but these are obviously not cheap bikes. But if you look at that bike, handmade in the USA out of a valuable mineral resource that potentially is going to last you for the rest of your life, and you compare that with a mass-produced carbon bike frame out of the factory in China from a company like Specialized, which cost a fraction of the price to produce and was made by very cheap labor, okay, very inexpensive labor, with a massive economy of scale difference, being that they produce way more frames and they make way more money every year selling those frames. And you do a direct comparison with this bike, you will find that you're being ripped off by the carbon manufacturer. You're getting far more bike for your money when you buy the Thai bike than you are buying the carbon bike. Invest your money wisely and go for the Thai bike. Now, you might not have $8,000 to spend on a bike, so you can't buy the overpriced carbon bike and you can't buy the very expensive Thai bike, but there are other options available to you. If we go down the page on the Lightspeed website, for example, they've got some closeout deals here for a T5, fantastic all-round bike. You can do anything you want on the T5, a little bit of gravel, a little bit of crit, a little bit of fondo, a little bit of just riding all over the place. T5 is an amazing, smooth riding, comfortable bike that is just going to become your best friend. Absolutely your best friend. Endurance road bike, and it was $3,095, which isn't a crazy amount of money when you consider most people that I know are spending $3,000 to $5,000 on carbon bikes. And you can pick one up right now, full bike, 105 group set for $2,695. Don't forget, like a $500 to $700 of that is the group set alone. Okay, then the wheels, then the handlebar, then the seat, then the seat post. You're getting down to a very cheap frame. If you just want to buy the frames, they have those available as well. They've got an Ultimate here. Do they have the Ultimate rim? Here we go, the better bike, the rim brake version. $2,000, $2,000. Get yourself one of the best Thai bikes there is available. This one is an aero racing Thai bike. Very, very nice indeed. Let's look. Do they have the T5? Here, a T5 frame. Less than $1,500. $1,500 gets you a very nice Thai frame. If you've already got a bike, simply transfer the components over to this one. You will thank me later. But if that's even too much money for you, there are other companies out there. Van Nicholas, for example. I believe Van Nicholas now make their bikes in China, but under the Van Nicholas brand, so you get the security of having a Western brand backing the Chinese production. So for warranties and concerns and things like that. And look, their top of the range frames come in at €3,000, which obviously is not that expensive for a top of the range bike frame. And their cheaper, the Ventus bike, $1,699 for a frame. So very affordable. But if even that is too much money for you, if that is more money than you were planning to spend on a road bike, there are other options available. There are lots and lots of companies coming out of Xiamen, China, and places like that, look, that are manufacturing Thai frames. I believe Cycling Maven had one custom made. Is it on here anywhere? I don't know. Somebody, he had a custom made Thai bike out of China. Seems really good. He liked it. He thought it was great. I think it cost him around about 1,000 Australian dollars. But here you look, you can pick up, some of these are multi-piece buys. You'd have to buy more than one, but some of them are just one-offs, right? Is it one piece you can buy here? Thai bike, $600. Custom Thai bike. You can have it branded with your name on it if you want. $600. There's some here, like if you bought the one where it's minimum order 2 pieces, You can pick them up for $500 US, and you could give one to a friend. You could order two in two different sizes, put your names on it, his and your name, $500. Now, granted, there is a question about the quality, but there would be a question about the quality of a $500 carbon bike. Which do you think you're safer on? A $500 carbon bike or a $500 Thai bike? You tell me. I have been riding on an alley bike before, aluminium bike, where my seat stay has snapped while riding and the bike stayed upright. The bike went very wobbly. I could feel loads of flex in the frame all of a sudden for no reason. Just went over a bump in the road and ping, the seat stay went, literally snapped at the weld. But the frame itself held together because metal has an inherent strength to it whereby it's not going to just collapse in on itself if one of the welds breaks. If you have a carbon bike and you were to snip one of the seat stays on a carbon bike and attempt to ride it, it would probably collapse on you. You would hit the deck very fast. So, safety-wise, if you're concerned, it's going to be a lot safer riding one of these than it is a carbon bike, and if it does crack on you, if you live in a big country at least, like the US or somewhere in Europe, you could probably take it somewhere where they can TIG weld it back together again for you. So, you know, swings and roundabouts. What I'm trying to say is, Thai is not as expensive as you think. What you get, the qualities of the material, for the amount of bike that you get for the money, it is way less expensive than carbon fiber. Yes, Ali is cheaper. Steel is probably cheaper as well if you don't go custom or fancy steel like my Chinelli. But, you know, honestly, Thai is not that expensive. I really object to that objection that people give me. Oh, Thai is so expensive, I can't afford Thai. Often people who say that are riding around on carbon bikes, which are way more expensive. Now, granted, you may have to do some sacrificing. Taking a look at, where was that frame I showed you? There we are. The T5 here for $2,500 basically. There's probably carbon bikes out there. I know there are Malaysian brand carbon bikes out there which you can pick up in Ultegra with Ali wheels, maybe even carbon wheels now, to be honest with you, that cost about that are in the sort of the $1,000 to $2,000 range. But then you're paying for the wheels and the group set. Does that make sense? Like with this 105 Lightspeed bike, okay, the 105 isn't that sexy. It's a great group set though. It's not that sexy, but after a few years, the group set's going to look worn out anyway, and you're probably going to want to upgrade it anyway if you've got some extra money at the next few Christmases, you know, from now. So why not just get the better frame and upgrade it as you go? That's what I do with my bike. So when you're choosing a bike, don't fall for the trap of buying components. Buy the frame. If you can buy the frame without components and just switch your components from your current bike over, that's the best and cheapest way to do it. And that is probably the most sensible way to do it if you're confident to do that. If you have to pay somebody else to do that for you, it can get pricey. So if you know how to do it yourself, that's the absolutely best way to buy a bike. That's how I buy bikes. I never buy full bikes now. I just buy frames and I build the bike myself because that way I can save a load of money. Like my Ultegra group set right now, on my Chinelli, that's been on 2 different bikes already. So I just move things around. When I want to ride one frame, I just move the group set over. So that is a really cheap and easy way to do it. But like I say, don't get caught up on the group set, get caught up on the frame. So invest in the frame is what I'm trying to say. So there you go. Any more points from this video? I think there might be one more. Let's just have a quick look. 12 minutes.
Okay, so that's covered off loads of really important and useful information about titanium. One key question I do want to ask you is, do you think we're ever going to see titanium bikes and parts start to become like more mainstream and more commonplace, or do you think it's going to stay as that sort of not quite elusive material, but a bit more of a niche material rather than something that's mainstream?
I think it will come down. Cost is probably the main factor to consider there, because it's so expensive as a raw material. It's difficult to work with.
Not that expensive.
Certainly slow to work with. All of those things are the costs that.
Here's the thing. He basically says no. And I agree with him. It's never going to happen. And the reason it's never going to happen is because there's way more profit in big bike manufacturers selling you fragile carbon bikes that break easily and go out of fashion every year, that you then feel, you're put under pressure by your friends and associates to then buy the latest one, right? If you're in a fancy group, Rafa buddies who play golf at the weekends as well, who all drive around in fancy cars, and you're one of these guys who buys like a Specialized SL7 or SL8, and all your buddies have got SL8s, and you're all riding around together, and then the SL9 comes out. If you're still riding the SL8 in 2 years' time, people are going to look down on you. That is why the carbon bike industry makes so much money. They're selling a fragile, easily breakable product, okay, that goes out of fashion every year. Every carbon bike after 1 year looks dated. It looks dated because everybody knows the paint job from the previous year. Everybody knows the frame style from the previous year. And everybody can see the technology differences from the previous year. Your bike looks old after 1 year. And they chip easily. They scratch easily. The paint fades because of UV light. They age. Thai bikes don't age. The Thai bikes are timeless. So there's really no point in big manufacturers selling those bikes. The points he makes are very, very true. Titanium is hard to work with. It is a difficult material to work with. It is difficult to machine. But if the demand was there, maybe you would see an increase in production of titanium, so it would come down in price. If the demand was there, maybe new technologies would come onto the market for machining and 3D printing titanium, which we're starting to have now. 3D printing is really going to revolutionize things. But you still have to manufacture the raw titanium to begin with, and that is a costly process. So he's not wrong. Titanium will never become mainstream, but the main reason it won't become mainstream is not because of the energy required to produce it, not because of the difficulties required to machine it, because all those can be cancelled out with fancy CNC machines. The main reason why Thai won't become popular is because of the same scam that businesses have been pulling on us for decades, hundreds of years, in fact. Like all light bulb manufacturers many, many years ago got together and decided they weren't going to make light bulbs that would last forever, even though there are light bulbs that were lasting forever. You don't know about that one. It's a conspiracy theory. Go look it up. But basically, they made light bulbs that would not burn out. And all the light bulb manufacturers got together and said, this is stupid. If we keep selling light bulbs that don't break and don't burn out, we are going out of business because no one's going to buy another light bulb again. And that's a true story. And they actually all got together in one big convention and all agreed that they wouldn't produce light bulbs that went past a certain amount of burn hours. It's the same thing with the bike industry. They're not going to give you a forever bike, because if you buy a forever bike, forever after that, you never need to buy another bike. That is why titanium is awesome. And that is why I'm a terrible businessman, because I tried to sell titanium bikes, which is the worst thing for a businessman to do, because what you end up doing is having no return customers. They're all my customers are very happy. All the customers that bought Thai bikes from me are very happy and would never change their Thai bike, but they will never come back. Because why would they need to, right? There you go. So that's the end of my video. Hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for watching. Hope it was interesting, fun for you, entertaining, a little bit informative. Any questions or queries, leave them in the comments section below, and I shall see you all in the next video. I really want to get my teeth stuck into something a bit more controversial, so do like the video, let me know that you appreciate it, and that this kind of thing is something you might be interested in as I get better at it as well. I'm not brilliant at it at the moment, but I will get better. And as always, folks, whatever kind of bike you are riding, and please, for goodness sake, go and invest in a Thai bike if you can, but whatever bike you're riding, do stay safe. I shall see you in the next video. Bye-bye.